Hey, what is going on, guys? Danny here. Welcome back to the channel, and I hope you've all been doing well. Nvidia has been counting down the days until they release their next-gen graphics cards, and everyone and their dog is pretty much excited for them. And who wouldn't be after the underwhelming and disappointment Turing brought us and their competitors AMD not delivering in a competitive manner to help fix this mess of a GPU landscape. Along with crazy price hikes, this was arguably the worst generation that enthusiasts, gamers, and anyone else in the GPU market had to unfortunately endure. I've made a video in the past explaining in more detail as to why the last generation was so disappointing, and I'll leave a link in the video description so you guys can check that out. With a new generation of video cards on the horizon, and so many people within the community showing such high anticipation, it got me thinking, who is actually going to be buying these video cards? Naturally, everyone is going to be excited and talking about it, regardless of whether you're in the market for a high-end, mid-range, or entry-level video card. But realistically, the amount of people that will be buying a RTX 3090 or RTX 3080 pales in comparison to the amount of people purchasing a budget, entry-level, or mid-range graphics card. I'll admit that basically ever since I upgraded to my 1080 Ti and using cards like the 2080 and 2080 Super, I focused a lot of my content on high-end hardware. And even recently with all the news, rumors, and leaks which have come out, it all pertains to high-end hardware for the expensive market that, let's be honest, only diehard fans, those enthusiasts, realistically will be buying. It seems as though the high-end segment seems to be getting the most attention these last couple of years. However, they do not represent the majority of consumers in the market. They are a niche segment because the majority of consumers aren't buying GPUs that cost them $500 to $1,200. You can practically build a whole system with that much money. And so realistically, you have most consumers purchasing GPUs anywhere from $100 to $350. Those are the cards which sell by the thousands to the masses. If you go ahead and just look at the recent Steam hardware surveys, you'll see cards like the 1060, 1050, 1050 Ti, 1650 dominating the market share. These cards are considered entry-level or budget cards, and they're supposed to be able to give the user a playable experience without having to break the bank. And like I said, while so many folks are excited for the RTX 3090 or 3080, what about the mainstream and budget segment? I felt like with this past generation of graphics cards, as messed up as the high-end got, at least there was something released to that market segment. But for the folks who are looking to spend around $150 or $200 to replace their RX 470s or 1050 Ti's, yeah, they got absolutely nothing, and rather they didn't get anything that was a compelling upgrade within that segment either. So in this video, we'll be talking about mainstream graphics cards and why I think they should get more attention, especially with the newer generation of graphics cards coming out, as I feel that both AMD and Nvidia are responsible for neglecting such an important market, and I'm hoping they give us some true replacements. One of the things that actually prompted me into making this video was a rumor that came from the leaker of the 3090 pictures we had a while back, and they actually state the prices of the Ampere Geforce stack, where the entry-level 3060 is going to start at $400. $400 for an entry-level graphics card? Seeing that just left me shaking my head and really pissed off if there was even a shred of truth in there. Since when did an entry-level card start at $400? Let's go back a few years so that we can establish a background and to give you guys a better perspective of where we're coming from. In the beginning of 2012, AMD had released the HD 7770 GHz edition, based on the Cape Verde chip, which was built using the all-new GCN architecture. The HD 7000 series were the first series from the RADEON Technologies group to introduce this new microarchitecture. The HD 7770 and 7750 graphics cards were targeted towards the entry-level and mainstream user base. Cards that could deliver a good playable experience, you know, that bang for the buck category, as long as you weren't trying to run them at super high-end 1080p setups. Back in 2012, 1080p was just starting to become the norm, and 4K was treated like how 8K is treated today. The HD 7770 GHz edition was the second GPU I had ever owned after my 8800 GT ended up dying. It was a nice little card that fulfilled the job for me, and as I wasn't primarily just using my PC for gaming, and I was using other systems at the time too, like my 360 and PS3. But I was using it for less demanding games like Garry's Mod, Counter-Strike, and League of Legends, and it fulfilled the job. With 10 compute units, 1 GHz clock speed, and 1 GB of VRAM, The card wasn't anything spectacular, but it still delivered performance that would give you a very well playable experience. Coming in at $160, it definitely checked that great price to performance requirement. And you could really slot this card into any machine due to its low power requirements without breaking the bank, and you'd have yourself a fine entry-level gaming rig PC. They also had a cut-down version of the 7770, which was the HD 7750, and that was a card that came in at around $110, I believe. So the point here is that for the folks who weren't looking to spend a whole lot of money but wanted a solution that could allow them to play, esport titles or, modern age triple titles with, modest settings without having to resort to paying several hundreds of dollars, the HD 7770 was a great choice. Now, as time goes on, with newer games coming out, with better graphics, newer engines, and visual features, they start to become more and more demanding. The user might also upgrade their setup. For example, they might get a higher resolution monitor, or they might get one that has a higher refresh rate. Therefore, you're going to need a graphics card which will give you more performance to keep up with those updates, that can allow you to set high or ultra graphics to enjoy that visual eye candy, but also push frame rates so you can experience smooth gameplay at the same time. As the years go by, you'll definitely notice your older GPU not being able to keep up. So naturally, the user will be looking at upgrading their older GPU. Now, the user could be more financially stable at this point, so if they want, they could go out and buy the latest flagship or high-end GPU that may be out at the time. However, most users will be thinking, hey, I got such good value out of my old entry-level or budget graphics card, so I'll probably just stick with the same segment, and 2 or 3 years down the road, there will surely be a graphics card that would have brought down previous flagship performance to the mainstream, and hopefully give me that same bang for buck caliber performance. And then I can use that money that I saved towards buying games or towards other hardware upgrades like finally getting an SSD or getting a larger hard drive to hold my expanding games library. That's the mentality most will have when heading into the newer generation of video cards when it comes time for an upgrade. Let's say it's now the first quarter of 2014, and the user is now looking to upgrade from their old HD 7770, and wants to stay within that same segment. They've now got a whole bunch of options to choose from, both AMD and Nvidia, which will offer great price to performance. Nvidia had just released the GTX 750 Ti, the first card based on their impressive Maxwell architecture. The GTX 750 Ti was one of the best budget cards you could get at the time, coming in at that $150 price point, so around that same price point as the old HD 7770 back in 2012. This was the go-to for many budget builders, as it could deliver great performance at 1080p with medium settings and give you 60 plus FPS. And at 1080p, it was about 33% faster than the HD 7770 as reported by Tech PowerUp. So there's a pretty good jump in performance, 2 years later for about the same price. Not to mention, the 750 Ti was very efficient. Again, you could throw this GPU in one of those old Dell Optiplex office machines and have yourself a nice entry-level gaming rig, because there wasn't an issue with this model as it didn't require PCIe power connectors from the power supply, as the PCIe slot was sufficient enough. So it was a great option as an entry-level card or option for budget gamers looking to upgrade. In fact, if you remember back in 2014 YouTube, you'd find countless console PC killer builds, many of them starring the 750 Ti as their go-to card. Now, if the user wanted, they could stretch their budget a bit more, and let's assume they actually built a proper gaming machine with a decent power supply. At around $200, you had the R9 270X from AMD. This was the GPU I bought in 2014 when I had upgraded from my HD 7770, as I had upgraded from an older 1600 by 900 monitor to a 1080p monitor, and unfortunately, at the time, my 7770 just wasn't cutting it, and I was starting to get more invested into PC gaming since I was so disappointed by the previous gen consoles. Anyways, the 270X was an awesome card. Sure, it wasn't as power efficient as the 750 Ti, and it wasn't a new GPU either, as it was a rebranded Pitcairn HD 7870 just overclocked. There was also a 270 Non-X, and that too was just a rebranded 7850. However, for 1080p medium to high gaming, these cards could definitely deliver. Looking at that same Tech PowerUp benchmark chart, it was 39% faster than the 750 Ti, and a whopping 72% faster than my old HD 7770. This was a performance increase I could definitely get behind. And remember, this was a graphics card that was $200, but it offered an amazing price to performance ratio. So I was quite happy with the upgrade, and I'm sure this was a great viable option for many users starting to get into PC gaming with a smaller budget, or we're looking to simply upgrade from an older GPU within that same segment. The main takeaway is that for this market segment, there were so many options for the user to choose from as a worthwhile and noticeable upgrade, something that was definitely worth their hard-earned cash. Now, let's try to keep things a bit consistent, and we'll stick with this 2-year upgrade cycle. It's now the middle of 2016, and there were many talks of both Nvidia and AMD releasing new GPUs on brand new manufacturing nodes after being stuck on the 28nm process for so long. Nvidia came right out of the gate with their mid to high-end graphics cards wowing everyone. The GTX 1080 set a new bar for flagship performance, faster than SLI 980s, and the 1070 matching the old Titan X Maxwell for $400. It was a showcase where everyone definitely lost their minds with. However, Nvidia hadn't released anything for the mainstream, so AMD was like, don't worry, we got you guys. And instead of directly competing with them in the high end, they released the famous RX 480, the card which promised to deliver premium HD performance to the masses and allowing the masses to enjoy VR. Now, there were many arguments made during that time that AMD should have also released a larger Polaris GPU that should have competed with a 1070 or 1080, and just releasing mainstream graphics cards could backfire on them. But nonetheless, it didn't take away from the fact that the 480 was a really good GPU. The 480 launched at $199, and deliver it did, as it essentially gave you 390X or 980 performance in that mainstream segment, and that's what it was all about. As previously, you'd have to shell out several hundreds of dollars, $400 plus, in order to attain that kind of performance. Now, in the middle of 2015, a year prior to the 480 releasing, I had actually ended up purchasing an R9 390 because I planned on upgrading to a 1440p monitor with FreeSync, and just found myself so invested in computer hardware and also my YouTube channel. It became my hobby, so that's why I ended up making the early upgrade for my 270X. Had things just remained the same for me, I probably would have ended up waiting until the RX 480 or 470 released and end up getting one of those models. And speaking of the RX 470, that was also an absolutely fantastic card as well, since it pretty much gave you like 85% of the performance the RX 480 did. It's funny because I remember when the cards came out back in 2016, and there was a whole discussion going on that AMD ended up making the 470 too good and that it would cannibalize sales of the RX 480. Nonetheless, it offered amazing value, really nailed that bang for buck experience, and it was highly recommended over cards like the GTX 1050 Ti, which, while it was cheaper than the 470, it was only like a $20 to $30 difference, and it was so highly recommended that you just get a 470 as you'll end up with 30% better performance for a bit more money. These Polaris GPUs actually did freak Nvidia the hell out, because this was a segment which they knew was going to be selling in large volumes. Again, refer back to the Steam hardware surveys and see which GPUs dominate the top spots. So Nvidia knew they would have to retaliate in a big way, and retaliate they did. Within a month, they announced the GTX 1060, a graphics card which competed very well against the RX 480. Although it did come in at a slightly higher price, it did edge out the RX 480 in most cases and was very power efficient at 120 watts TDP. But again, the point I'm trying to make is whether your budget was $150, $180, $220, or $250, there were a lot of good options to choose for in these segments. The RX 470, which was the successor to the R7 370, which was a rebranded 270X, was a great deal faster, and the RX 480 practically doubled its performance. So either of those two cards would have been excellent upgrades for anyone who was rocking older cards in that $150 to $200 segment like the 270X or 750 Ti. I also did get an RX 480 to play around with because I was so intrigued by Polaris' performance, and did do a comparison to my trusty R9 390, and I was quite astonished because not only did it trade blows with the card that, cost almost double, it was performing adequately at 1440p too. So for just $200, you are getting seriously good value here, and to many in the segment, that's what it was all about. Polaris was great for the masses, and even both Sony and Microsoft used some custom chips with Polaris in their mid-cycle console refreshes. So after 2016, I felt like things here in the GPU market ended up going downhill. In 2017, apart from the release of the impeccable GTX 1080 Ti, nothing else was released that took the market by storm. AMD had launched the RX 500 series, which were all just rebrands of the 400 series, just slightly overclocked. Then we finally had their answer in the high end, the RX VEGA series, which were trash. Then we had the crypto mining boom, which messed up GPU pricing, availability, and definitely caused delays in the GPU manufacturers' release schedules. So late third quarter of 2018 rolled around and the mining bubble had bursted. Things started to settle down, and then Nvidia had launched the RTX 20 series GPUs, again starting with the high end first, which ended up negatively received as they didn't improve upon the previous generation in regards to traditional rasterization performance. There were enormous price hikes where everything had basically shifted a tier up, and ray tracing wasn't even featured in mass by devs as it was a very performance tax heavy feature. These price hikes definitely had a lot of people concerned. It got a lot of people fearing for what will happen in the mainstream and budget segment. And they were right to be worried because their biggest fears came true. When it came time to release an X60 class card, Nvidia came out with the RTX 2060 at a whopping $349 MSRP. Remember, when Nvidia mentions MSRP, they are also referring to the reference spec. Meanwhile, their Founders Edition cards, which are considered to be slightly better binned, are marked up quite a bit, about $50 to $100. And $349 MSRP is what their mid-range X70 class cards used to start at. So AnonTech said it best, not quite mainstream. While the X60 class cards from Nvidia have always been targeted towards the entry level or mainstream, this was not a price that was within reach for most gamers in this market segment. But Nvidia had other plans. They then released the GTX 1660 and 1650. These cards were their options for those in the budget market. However, just like with their high-end cards, they didn't offer any performance upgrades significant enough to warrant an upgrade for those users in this segment. The 1660 came in at around the same price as when the 1060 was launched at, but was only about 10% faster. The 1650 was also an absolute joke of a video card. When Nvidia was ridiculed for not beating the 470 with their 1050 Ti, the 1650 ended up repeating the same mistake, yet it was around the same price, $150, which made it an even bigger disappointment. Nvidia did end up refreshing most of their cards with the super variants for their original MSRPs, which helped make the market more in favor towards the consumers, but the improvements overall weren't anything drastic, and most of the damage by then was already done. Okay, so what about AMD? Their bread and butter for their GPU department has always been the mainstream and budget segment. Surely they would give consumers something more worthwhile to upgrade from their 570s and 580, right? Well, whatever Nvidia was on, the RADEON Technologies group went down the same trip. A lot of people had hoped that they would fix up this mess of a GPU landscape Nvidia had created, but instead they decided to join them. Listen, as great as the 5700 and 5700 XT were, they were significantly overpriced, just like their Nvidia counterparts, despite their price cuts. These cards were supposed to be the chips that owners of the 580, 480, and 470 were supposed to upgrade to. But at $350 and $400 respectively, this was definitely out of reach for most gamers, just like how the 2060 was. You can compare the die sizes of the 5700 series to the size of the RX 480. Navi 10 isn't that much bigger than Polaris 10 was. The 5700 XT is also just further proof of that as well, since it came in at around $280. To further add insult to injury, AMD had released the 5500 XT coming in at $199. So that same price tag as the RX 480. So we're back in that same price range, that sweet spot price segment. But when you go ahead and take a look at benchmarks, it's an absolutely joke of a video card. It just barely edges out the RX 580, which was a rebranded RX 480, and in some cases also loses. Imagine releasing a chip that not only costs the same as a GPU which you released 3 years prior, but performs the same as well. Like, what's the point? If I'm an owner of an RX 570 or RX 580 and I'm working with a similar budget, what the hell is there on the market for me that actually gives me a significant and noticeable performance upgrade? The answer is nothing. Not unless you're willing to increase your budget by 50 or 100%, and then you'll find some options that will give you, significant gains over your 1060 or 480. Now listen, I could go on for another couple of hours talking about GPU comparisons of models that came out a couple years ago to graphics cards which came out in 2016 and the ones that came out last year. But obviously that would make this video go on for way too long, and at this point, I'll assume you guys already know what the deal is. But if you were interested in a more in-depth comparison, Steve over at Hardware Unboxed actually made a pretty good video earlier this year, which I'll link down in the video description, where he compares recent budget GPUs to models from 2016, and the results practically speak for themselves. And I'll say this as well, with the way both AMD and Nvidia have messed up the GPU landscape, it actually affects the mainstream market more negatively than it does for folks in the enthusiast and high-end segment. It's well established that everyone gets screwed, but the guys who are in the high-end segment are obviously interested in those GPUs because they're just in a better position financially. So if push comes to shove, they can comfortably extend their budgets to meet those higher price tags. However, for people who had purchased a 1050 Ti for like $130 or an RX 470 for 160 or 150, or maybe even like an RX 480 for 180. Back in like 2016, there were some really good deals going on where you could find RX 480s for like mid $150. But how are you going to tell them that they'll need to add another couple $100 and, call it a day? I'm hoping that nobody takes me the wrong way and thinks that I'm downplaying $100. I'm not. That's a heck of a lot of money. All I'm saying is that it's not so easy for a prospective buyer of a $150 to $200 GPU to say, well, no problem, I'll just add a bit more and buy that $350 graphics card so I can actually get an improvement. It's not that easy. They're really hoping that whether it's Nvidia or AMD, they can attain previous high-end or flagship performance in the mainstream segment now. Just like how the RX 480 and GTX 1060 achieved that. But when you see that the cards currently in the market aren't that much better than the GPUs you paid the same money for, then they're obviously going to get turned off by that. Hence the GTX 1060 still remaining in the top spot for the GPU hardware surveys. So the question is, where do we go from here? Unfortunately, the answer to that question isn't so simple. I mean, it's easy to say, well, let's all hope that Nvidia has a change of heart and that the RTX 3060 will be priced at $200 and performs like a 2080 or 2080 Super. Unfortunately, I doubt that's going to happen though. And if we circle back to the rumor which I talked about earlier in the video, where the Ampere GeForce stack is rumored to start at $400 for the entry-level graphics card, it's just astonishing to see that, Nvidia would even have the audacity to try that. I mean, $1,400 for the high-end GPU is already pretty freaking steep. So if this rumor is true, all the tiers are getting shifted once again. Ampere is going to improve upon traditional rasterization performance in a much bigger and impactful way than Turing ever did, that's for sure, as well as much better ray tracing performance where users can turn on the effects and not have to worry about diminished performance. However, it still doesn't justify these oblivious price hikes. The cards aren't out yet, and any official announcement has yet to happen. But with more competition hopefully this time around, I'm hoping that Nvidia will not try to take advantage of consumers so hard as they did last time. With so much external pressure on them, with what a ongoing global health crisis, it'll be comical to see headlines where Nvidia decides to charge users several $100s for GPUs when they really should be a lot cheaper in 2020. Not to mention if Nvidia messes this up and even AMD don't make the right changes for their desktop graphics cards, then a lot of people are going to be looking towards the game consoles. Like I said, we're in tough times. A lot of nations are going through a recession right now. And, I don't see how AMD or Nvidia could convince so many users to drop so much cash on a GPU for their gaming needs. If, say, the Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5, which are looking to be more promising than the last gen consoles ever were, can perform adequately for their needs, as opposed to when a GPU alone would cost them as much as the entire consoles would. It's actually pretty funny. I'm finding that GPUs, just like how smartphones are getting financially inflated, and as a tech enthusiast, that really displeases me because go back like 8 or 9 years, you could get yourself a flagship caliber cell phone or smartphone and only have to pay around $600 and you got your top end features there. But as gradually the years went on, the prices went up, and if you want a flagship phone like a Galaxy Note 20 Plus or whatever, you're looking to pay $1,500 to $2,000 for a smartphone when you can build an incredible gaming PC with that much money. But I mean, now we look at GPUs, and top tier graphics cards a few years back would cost you $599 or $699, and now we're looking at possibly $1,400, which is absolutely insane. So I'm hoping that with this new generation of video cards, that users in the mainstream segment can finally get something that's a worthwhile upgrade and not have to extend out of their budget, because they really can't. Something that, once again can nail that bang for buck category cards like the RX 480 or 270X did. Well, this video ended up going on for much longer than I had anticipated, but it was something I had on my mind for quite some time and did want to get out there for you guys. I hope you guys found this video to be informative and helpful. Let me know your thoughts down below. Check out the video description on ways to support the channel and for my other videos. If you guys are interested in more content like this, then make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one.